polarization, which is, as I say, which is dysfunction. So they will maintain, albeit subconsciously, they will maintain something like a bad relationship or a bad environment, or they will magnetize ill fortune or even illness to themselves. And when that dysfunction is in place, all the kind of resentment and pain that accumulates from years of this disowned inner work can then be conveniently channeled into the object of dysfunction, you know, the bitch, the bastard, the job, the pointlessness, the illness, etc. And then again, they still continue not to be able to do it. So this denial is, unfortunately, you know, it's sort of quite endemic in society. So there has to be an acceptance that the inner work does involve looking within, and it's worth it, because when you do it, not only does life begin to take on what we all want, really, which isn't just authenticity, which isn't just fulfillment, but is magic, is the exhilaration of life, which I've spoken about once or twice before. And that's what everybody wants. And I'm sure you see that in people's eyes when they visit the Iseti ranch. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for that inspiration in this magical encounter. And all we need to do, really, is a very simple thing. We need to acknowledge that the universe really compels us to encounter growth. And all the subsequent emotional upheavals and all the rewiring that we have to do to clean the plate, basically, to get to do this work, the closer we move our consciousness to the point of transition, to the point of change and the point of acceptance of change, the better. So we have to do this for ourselves. No one else can do it for us. And whether you're a regular guy or a very, very conscious guy or a higher dimensional guy, everybody knows that the path that we walk is very much customized to our own individual lives, and all the subtle textures and dynamics are all perfectly aligned for ourselves. So you can certainly give somebody wisdom, and you can point to the moon, to use the old expression, and say, this is one way to do it, this is something worth looking at. And there are sacred practices that can, you know, really hugely assist the individual with calming the mind, stilling ego, putting psychological wiring just for a moment, just to suspend it while we get there. So there are those things there, but very much we have to understand that really the path leads to us only doing it ourselves. So we have to go very much to the core of what we are, to sharpen our thinking, yes, but also to acclimatize ourselves, to use one word for it, to our own spirituality. And again, if anyone has a problem with that, they probably don't on your show, but you could think of it as metaphysics or rewiring or self-help or whatever. And when we do that, we directly address all the source of the change and the any emotional turbulence that arises from that, and everything begins to align. So this is very much a process of alignment. And as this occurs, in the same way that the barrier between mind and spirit begins to blur in a very pleasing and agreeable way, so the barrier between the inner experience of the world and the apparent out there experience of the world begins to dissolve a little bit. And we understand, as we mentioned previously about the quantum level of things, that really there's no distinction between what is inside our head and what is outside it. And so spirit represents that in the most pure and graceful way possible. And once we begin to walk that path, after those first few difficult steps, going inside, each step gets bigger but easier. And once you get down that path, you know, some days you are literally gliding down it, and it's joyful and it's brilliant and it's wonderful. So there is no real thing to fear for this in any true sense of the word. It's very much an acceptance of oneself as a significant, important, sovereign being, to take yourself seriously as a powerful resource in this world, and to not only take yourself seriously, but also to have love for yourself. Because self, really, although many Eastern traditions want to kind of squash that to some extent, is kind of your best friend, really, because it's always there with you in all the stuff that you do. Self is always there, so you may as well make friends with it and have some kind of harmony with it, and not let it dominate, but also not try and conflict with it and battle with it all the time. You know, it's there as an ally, really. And I think once that tonality is established, then we can enjoy being human beings, and we can enjoy playing our guitars and making wonderful dinners and, you know, making love with our beautiful, intimate partners and all the rest of it. All those things are there for a reason, there for an experience here while we're here. It doesn't mean we have to ignore that. It means we can, you know, to some degree, and this is a little bit of a cliche, but celebrate that physicality whilst we integrate that with the higher work.
I'm glad you said that, because I've been hammered so many times for making those same statements. And, you know, I always ask, you know, a lot of the yogis, you know, they die. And I said, why do they die? Because the body's nothing to them. And they say that this body's nothing. It means nothing to me. You know, this physical world is all Maya. It's all illusion. It's all, and so they remove their energy from it, and yes, it dies. And so I always felt, well, why not bring heaven to earth? Why not bring this higher conscious energy into the physical, you know, and align everything in perfect alignment and ascend versus, you know, letting the body go to dust as they are often focusing on it as just dust. And so I always felt that was a little glitch in the system that so many of us just would never look at.
It is. I think it's very important to understand that this is, you don't just want to move and phase out of the 3D to 4 and 5D spaces, because you can't do that until you achieve a certain level of integration from the enfolded dimensional space, if we can, again, use that terminology. So in other words, as we acquaint ourselves with trans-dimensional experiences, i.e. things that don't necessarily conform to the 3D laws of physics and of expectation, as we begin to bring those into our lives, then we, to an extent, begin to, and this is a loaded word, but we begin to purify our mind, and we begin to discipline our ability to move into higher dimensional spaces. Because if you don't do that, and if you gain great insight and great power and the ability to see forthcoming events and the ability to reconfigure matter, move through walls and all those wonderful, exciting things, if you're not clear in yourself and if you're not psychologically balanced, then you're going to create disastrous circumstances. So there seems to be a kind of universal law that you have to go through the training exercise of the 3D world, the physical world, before you can get to that. So if you think about it as zoomed out and as objectively as possible, there is no greater training ground for that than here, because here, in time, in the temporal zone, we get to see the consequences of our thoughts, and we get to see the karmic reactions of the things that we do. So being in a body for 70, 80, 90 years, if you're lucky, you get to contemplate the consequences of your actions, how you interact with other people, what you do, how you spend your time, basically. So at any point in your life, you can just step back for a moment, just get off the train for a minute and look at it, and just contemplate, how are you spending your time? What are you putting your energy into? And that is always a very ready, easy-to-hand measure of the kind of alignment that you've got. Because if you are not aligned, then you won't be happy, you won't be fulfilled, and you probably won't be doing the things that you want to do. As you begin to align yourself, as you begin to integrate mind more fluidly with spirit, which again is a perfectly organic, natural thing, then those experiences start to shift positively, and life tends to throw you these kind of brilliant synchronistic advantages and signposts, and they come in little small forms, like meeting somebody or having a conversation or bumping into someone on the train or whatever. But they also have significant, more phenomenal forms, like visions, like mystical encounters, and like contacts. And when those things occur, they represent a turning point at that point in the alignment in your life, and your spiritual trajectory and your physical trajectory are balanced, and you stand in those moments when synchronicities occur, centered, basically. So whenever you encounter a synchronicity, you are centered. You are stood within the center of your own circle of experience. And that is, again, a very good tool to understand that you are on the right path, you are on the right line, because the universe is incredibly supportive in this respect.
Mm-hmm. So is that like developing the observer, where you master that loving detachment? You can watch all these things and still enjoy them and love them and all these things around you, but you're still in that space of the observer and not thrown onto that endless roller coaster, of attachment, you might say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly that. That if you always see things from purely mind, purely self, then everything tends to be experienced, as you put it, as a roller coaster with ups and downs and highs and lows and things that advantage you and things that disadvantage you. If you step off that roller coaster, you can observe the experiences that come to you a little bit more impartially. To zoom out is the way I describe it. You change your zoom level, so it's not right under your nose as it is when you're driving the car, or you're writing a letter or something. You have to be present and focused to do that. But there are times when it's good to completely zoom out from this and to see things on a greater scale, to observe not only your own narrative, but the higher narratives, the overlapping narratives, the meta-narratives that Robert Anton Wilson used to describe. And you realize that there are archetypal movements of energy in your life as well. So as Jung identified certain archetypes, we see them in our lives in the shape of relationships and people and all the things that shape us, positive and negative. But as you bring spirit into your daily experience, and again, in a very organic way, whether you're brushing your teeth or whether you're meditating on a mountaintop, it should have the same fidelity, however profound or trifling these things may seem. As you bring spirit in, then a very interesting thing happens, which is you don't take things personally all the time. The things that come into your life, you can enjoy them, you can not like them, you can embrace them, you can move away from them, but you're not always taking it personally, which to someone who doesn't have spirit seems very strange. You say, well, how can I not take that personally, because it's me here? Well, it is you here if you're just a biological machine. But if you accept that you're using your biological machine for an experience, it's kind of like a video game. You don't necessarily take it personally when your little video game avatar gets squashed by a monster or something. You just think, oh heck, let's start that level again and do things a different way. And in the same way, if a negative experience befalls you, as many observers have pointed out, it's usually an opportunity for growth wrapped up in a little crisis. And depending on your awareness will depend on the density or the severity of that crisis. So if your awareness is low, you're going to get smacked in the teeth by something quite sizable. If your awareness is high, it will take on a more subtle flavor, like it may be a dissatisfaction or an apathy. And those things have the same effect, which is, again, an opportunity, when you zoom out, an opportunity to realign, to examine where you are on your trajectory and